Look, as a creative, I have pitched millions of times, millions of ideas, had millions of yeses and millions of nos. And the pattern that I've noticed is...
In the end of the day, when you're promoting a brand, when you're running a campaign or designing a brand, you want two things. You want people to pay attention to you, and you want them to...
I think that one of the outcomes of the last few years and all of the sort of unrest and uncertainty is brands have got less and less.
So if we make brands more brave, with more interesting messages, more provocative messages, that will make people share those messages to others, it's what's going to generate.
Welcome back to the second series of Unfiltered. This is the show where we celebrate the imperfect, the unvarnished, and the unashamedly raw journeys that shape our growth. We're bringing you dynamic duos who've propelled each other forward through thick and thin. This series is going to be bigger, bolder, and this time, thanks to our friends at the Marketing Academy, global. Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered in partnership with the Marketing Academy. Now, this is an episode I've been particularly excited to bring to our audience. Now, the most powerful ideas don't come from playing it safe. Often they come from the willingness to see beyond the challenge, beyond the status quo, and see connections where others see barriers. Sergio Brodsky is a strategist obsessed with this very thing and has reshaped the way that we think about brands, culture, and influence. He's led the revitalisation of more iconic brands than I have time to list. A personal favourite of mine, however, is the Australian Grand Prix. He's an RMIT lecturer, a columnist, a contributor to the World Economic Forum, amongst a million other things that help bring amazing ideas to life. Gemma Hunter is a creative force truly to be reckoned with. Having built some of the world's most iconic brands, partnerships, and experiences that sit at the intersection of marketing and entertainment, including the GT Academy, a campaign so prolific it was turned into a feature film. She's won every award under the sun and deservedly won a place amongst Australia's top 20 creative leaders. But we are talking dynamic duos. Together, beyond mastering the art of reinvention, they've blurred the lines between disciplines, industries, and even the way we tell stories and build partnerships, and have built a duo founded on the collision of critical thinking and transformative growth. Gemma, Sergio, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So where did this begin? Let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start.
I think it began with a little pink shock from my perspective. I saw this woman and she had pink pompons on her shoes. And I started thinking, wow, she's different, she's interesting, I need to speak with her. And that was almost 10 years ago when we both were made scholars of the Marketing Academy.
Okay.
That prompted me to come and say hi.
Yeah, and I think walking into the Marketing Academy, I was coming off the back of 18 months of treatment for breast cancer. And so I arrived at the boot camp pretty exhausted, to be honest, pretty depleted. And I was a little, I'm usually quite high energy, and I was a bit concerned that I didn't have enough energy for the boot camp I was about to go on. And then I met Sergio and I'm like, it's going to be okay. He's got enough energy for both of us.
And everything okay? All good?
Absolutely fine.
Wonderful.
Now, yeah.
And so talk me through, in its essence, what the next 10 years held, because we've been talking and you guys have sort of floated within each other's orbits, but it hasn't quite worked. How have we got Sergio and Gemma at the table together, and in what capacity?
Yeah, so I've tried to hire Sergio a number of times across different businesses that I've been working for.
Playing hard to get.
in sort of full-time roles and project roles. And, for one reason or another, as the way of the world, it hasn't quite worked out. And earlier last year, we found ourselves in a position where we had both stepped out of the roles that we were in and were thinking about what to do next. And we were going for a walk along the beach one day. And I think just within that conversation, we sort of just stopped and looked at each other and said, maybe this is the moment. Let's do it for ourselves.
Wow. And what was it that was so magnetic about Sergio back then that drew him to you and you to him?
His brain. I mean, his brain works in a way that I haven't really come across before.
Can you give me a bit more specific?
Yeah, I really love spending time with people that you have a conversation and two or three things happen. One is you're challenged intellectually. So that the questions they're asking and the statements they're making make you think differently. 2 is it's comfortable doing that. You know, no matter how hard you're debating, no matter what different ends of the scale you're on, you get to a better outcome because of the conversation. And I think 3 is you just can have fun along the way. So that's really it for me.
Sergio?
I'll start with the fun. So Gemma was definitely someone that I had a lot of fun with when we met, and throughout this past 10 years. I think, you know, the description that I gave you as soon as I saw her, you know, she's wearing pink watch. I started wearing pink glasses because pink is for party, right? And black is for business, and that's how we like to roll. But I think that Gemma, aside, you know, from this very creative persona that she lives and breathes, and it's part of her character as well, she's someone who is 100% real. And you know, what has happened to her just before joining the Marketing Academy, and the fact that she joined, you know, having you know, battled cancer, was something that made me realize how much more which I should be able to do. So she inspired me in a way that showed a lot of resilience, a lot of maturity, and a lot of energy as well. I as you know, I'm a bomb of energy, but I took a lot from you as well, from that very moment, which gave me so much perspective, not as a professional, but as a human being. I said, thinking just like, wow. And every time that we have a debate or a conversation, she will bring a little dose of reality that will make me step back, you know, get out of my head and say, wow, this is real, and I need to change the way I'm thinking. So someone that can push me back in a way that is so effective is something that has been very rare to find. And I found that in Gemma, and it's almost like a marriage. You know, you need to bring the best from each other. And she does that in every interaction.
What's the best in Sergio that you bring out of him?
Oh, that's a good question, which maybe you should ask him. But
Right.
I think probably a bit of a slowdown. So I think Sergio works at 100 miles an hour, and because he's so smart, it's easy for him to get to the answer really quickly. But in business, we need to take people on the journey, and I'm really collaborative in my leadership style. So I'm all about bringing everyone together to get to the outcome. So I think it's probably that. It's probably I'm the anchor sometimes, going, hang on a minute, let's just stop and think about this again before we move forward.
Other side of the coin, what is the thing that you are most proud of that he's jettisoned as baggage?
I don't know if he's got a huge amount of baggage. I think possibility, I would say. So
what do you mean by that?
So I think sometimes Sergio might think, oh, is that possible? Can we do it? Are we going to get there? Are we going to get this deal? And I don't have the word impossible in my vocabulary. Any team that I've worked with over the years will tell you, don't ever say impossible or can't around her. There's always a way. So I think it's probably that. It's that optimism that we can do this. We just haven't quite got to the answer yet.
Sergio, spoiler alert, the 2 questions are coming your way. What's the best that you bring out of Gemma?
I think it's her ability to bring her critical thinking at every interaction. As creatives, they talk about ideas, but Gemma goes above and beyond that. And she knows the mechanics of the idea and how it's going to impact audiences and how it's going to impact the business and the people who are building the ideas behind the scenes as well. So I think that this technical understanding that makes sense to sell the idea is something that is very good for business, is very good for us, and makes my job a lot easier. How to create a strategy around that. So Gemma's experience is something that came as a massive, an encyclopedia of resources to my mind, and the things that now I know I can do.
Other side of the coin, what's the B side to that? What are you most proud of that Gemma's let go of in the time that you've known each other?
Again, I mean, it's such a difficult question because there isn't an occasion that I tell her, stop talking because this is not helping. I think that even when she pushes me really, really hard, it is so helpful.
But if you had to pick something.
But if I had to pick something, yes, I know something. Gemma is also a copywriter, right? And she is incredibly talented. But sometimes, on emails, a little grammar mistake or, it's a bit short, not explaining enough. And clarity for me is the most important thing. I'm not, originally English-speaking person. I was born in Brazil. I lived in many different places. But I grew up speaking English. You'll never be able to take the accent from me, but my grammar is, as perfect as someone who was taught in Oxford. I published books written in English as well, so I can be a bit pedantic about it. And that was something that I raised once or twice, and yeah, she was very, open to that. And but I was very afraid because I'm just telling her something that is important, but is not that important. And what if, that comment creates friction in our relationship? But on the other hand, it's like silly mistakes like that can take away the importance or the relevance or the gravitas that you bring when communicating something. So having every single delivery impeccably delivered is something that is really, really important to me.
Yeah, I find it's always amazing, like the significance of the insignificant in these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Well, credit to you both. That's a really difficult set of questions to answer with the other person in the room. I think that's a testament to the connective tissue and the gravity of your relationship. I'm picking up on like a really yin-yang dynamic, right? So there's two areas I'd love to understand. The first is around mutual mentorship, because clearly there is complementary skill sets. And unlike a lot of other dynamic duos that we've spoken to where there is a real alignment in terms of compounding skills, you seem to both really bring the counterpoint. And how do you guys go about mutual learning and mutual mentorship with one another, especially as you're building something? And we've discussed what you guys are in the process of building.
Yeah, look, we can talk about something that we're building with a building company, a construction company, and I think we had that creative collision in the moment that we're briefing a designer to start, creating logo concepts, for this rebrand. And in my mind, I was being very technical about it, how to position the brand in the right way, how to translate that positioning statement into something more visually appealing as well, but, coming from a strategist. So I'm giving coordinates, I'm giving information. I am not really inspiring the designer. And what came out of that first round of concepts wasn't really great. Gemma relooked at the brief, and then one of the things that she told me was there is something called a limpet's teeth. And it's an animal, it's a creature, and the teeth of this animal are like really, really durable, really strong. I think it's stronger than titanium. And she said, throw it there. And then said, you know what, take the brief, rewrite it yourself. And then she brought all of these things that I would never, first of all, would never have thought of any of that. And in my mind, didn't make sense. But
you thought I was bonkers.
Yes, but she made me stop. And to her credit, because I took a couple of steps back and I said, look, this looks a bit crazy, but it's different. And I know where she's coming from. So let's give it a go. And the second round came and was so on point.
I think it's such an amazing little microcosm of sort of where logic and emotion meet, which is sort of the ever-present tension in marketing, right?
Yeah.
Logic says one thing, emotion says another, and I feel as though we tend to gravitate to thinking people are logical when we're deeply emotional beings.
Yeah.
Other side of the coin, Gemma, how do you guys go about navigating conflict? When have you fundamentally disagreed on something and had to build a bridge from both sides?
Yeah. So last week we got sent a piece of content from Yves Saint Laurent, and it was a beautiful film that looked like a traditional perfume ad, but actually by the time you got to the end of it, it was standing up for domestic violence. And we had a completely opposite point of view on this piece of content, and we went at it for quite some time. But we listened to each other. So even though we were both really strong in our point of view, we were taking on board what the other one said. And we got to the point of, yeah, okay, we're aligned. We agree what our point of view is now. I think the great thing about us is it's not so much conflict as debate. Because we respect each other's thinking so much, we want to know what the other one thinks and why they think it. And then we're learning from it. So we haven't really had major conflict. We have things that we don't agree on, but we're open-minded to the other person's point of view.
That's such a powerful reframe. Like, we don't have conflict, we have healthy debate. And is that something that started from the very beginning? Is it something that was built, in increments over time?
I think it was always like that. I think, like I said, when we met at the boot camp at Marketing Academy, we had like many interesting speakers coming, and in between breaks, Gemma would usually be the person that I would come and say, oh, I like this and this and that. And she would come, not so sure about this, but maybe that. So those frictions that create memorability, right? Because when you don't have a friction, you cannot remember. That's how memories are formed. And the more she was provoking me and giving a new perspective to things, the more I had a desire to learn from her. So I think it's, this mind mining between the two of us that creates, this togetherness and builds on each other's ideas.
And what happens when you get it wrong?
I mean, you learn, right? You can't be successful in life, the world, business without fucking it up from time to time.
Yeah.
It's the mistakes that I think are often the catalyst to greatness. So for us, it's about being open to, we tried that. It didn't go as we expected it to go, but this is what we've learned out of it and what we'll do differently next time. So yeah, we're fine to make mistakes and grow with them.
Yeah, and I think you won a couple of times, and I said, enough, you won.
You won.
We had a couple of debates. I think it was a tagline for a client, and was like, on and on. I was, get it, you won. I don't have anything else to. No argument will overcome this.
But there's also, I think, there's something in that, right? Like having the humility to know, like the humility to have our mind changed and to go, you know what, you've got me there, right? Not everything has to be, at the intersection of what we thought.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's often a harder pill to swallow.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what you're building together. I want to understand the shared vision because I'd love to then step into how that contrasts against your prior experience, where you're now the masters of your own destiny, what we were talking about beforehand. So where are we at now as a duo?
I think one thing that was really important to us at the beginning, and we talk about a lot, is our values. So we started there. We started literally with a session going, what are both our values and how do they come together? And that was great because most of our values were really shared. There were a couple of things, critical thinking for Sergio and diversity, equality and inclusion for me, that we were like, we're really passionate about this. It doesn't necessarily matter that the other person's not as passionate about it, but it's part of our ecosystem. So basing ourselves in our values, courage, curiosity, creativity, that's really important to us. And somewhere where kindness matters, it's a hard slog out there. The world's pretty crazy these days and intense and fast paced. And so the ability to just be kind to ourselves and each other and have fun along the way is really important. Having worked in advertising agencies for a lot of my career, it feels like the kindness has been sucked out of that world. It's just go, go, go. Yeah. So that's really important to us.
You've given me the perfect segue into sort of where I'd love to explore next, which is, what are how has your vision of success shifted over the time that you've known one another, and the hallmarks of success, and also what the hallmarks aren't? So maybe let's start at the beginning. What does success look like for where you're at now as a duo and what you're building together?
I think that, we're winning business. We're capturing new clients. Clients are really enjoying working with us. And
I'm going to give you an opportunity to do a shameless plug. So for those that are tuning in, what are you guys working on at the moment?
Yeah, we have. So we have. We recently finished a project with a fashion label, Melbourne-based company, but with international reach, distributing their clothing for department stores in Australia and in the United States. Gemma was leading that project with them. I think you can tell a lot more about what you've done and how you help them grow and pretty much solidify the brand and remove some of the confusion that they had between the two brands that they were working on. I've been leading a different project, a total rebrand, business transformation with a construction company, which is a high growth business, extremely successful with margins that I have never seen before.
I think homeowners and builders will, anyone that has to build a home at the moment will attest to those margins.
Yeah, so a really, really good business from a P&L standpoint. However, a massive cost to the business was held because of the fast growth as well. So the whole idea of, break things and then fix later may work to some, not for everyone.
Not as you scale.
Yeah. And for them to move from this, they've been around for 6 years. They're no longer a startup. Now they're at the point of scaling up. But for that to happen, they need to fix the culture because their culture had to pay a massive price, for their success. And it's something that the rebrand is addressing, not only in rewiring their processes, their ways of working, their communications, but also all of the guiding principles.
The DNA.
The DNA of that business. So everything that got them here is not going to take them to where they want to go. So all of that is gone. It's not even that it was neutral, it was detracting. The current brand is detracting value from the business. And this is a pretty significant change, and it's quite alarming as well when you find a situation like that. But for us, it's a dream project because to work with Chanel or Nike or Apple, it's like a 1% that I can improve here or there. But if I can completely turn around the culture of a business that is so negative to something that, could completely transform the category itself, not just the business, I think it's super stimulating. Yeah.
So as two people at the coalface for pathfinding growth, right? And growth is harder to find at the moment, no matter who I speak to across every sector. Good growth is even harder to find. What are we getting wrong?
In the industry, or?
You tell me. You can go wherever you'd like.
The higher up you get the food chain, the less connected to the customer they are. And ultimately, it's all about human beings and how human beings react to what's going on in the world and what they want and what they need. And so that's something that we're bringing back to the table is the humans at the end of it. And those humans aren't just your customers, but they're your staff, your team members as well. So the growth that we talk about isn't just commercial. Commercial growth is really important, and we are highly focused on that. And brand has, a significant role to play in that. But it's also about growing capability and confidence within your team to be able to think critically and have a future vision and step out of your comfort zone and, take a risk and do something new. So growth for us is people plus product, if you like.
And do you find that I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in on this, do you find that we're overly compartmentalizing that? The people are taken care of by this department and the product is that department and commercial outcomes of that department, when in fact it's this reciprocal and deterministic melting pot where actually it's the one tide and all it's lifted or lowered.
Totally. Honestly, if I had $1 for every time I've heard this time last year, we could just retire. There are still businesses that are focused on, but we did it last year, so we have to do it again. Yeah, but the world's changed. So it no longer makes sense to do that. So yes, I do think, we've got to take a step back and look at what's right, what's really going to drive growth.
Yeah, I think that, something that is talked about all the time and possibly for the past 20 years is the erosion of trust. And the trust is something that everyone talks about, but few people really understand and can articulate what is this thing, right? Because if it's such an impediment, how do I define the problem to then try to fix it? And it's very hard, right? I went on a rabbit hole trying to understand trust. I spoke to some of the biggest experts in the world about that. Rachel Botsman is one of them. The Northwestern University in the United States, they have the Trust Project, which is possibly the most comprehensive study about trust in the world. And I had a few discussions with some of the academics that gave me a lot of insight there. So beginning with the fact that, trust is what? Is to be comfortable when relating to the unknown. right? I don't really know what you're doing. I don't really know who you are, but I have a degree of trust. And I'm giving that to you because, I'm certain that something will happen. But how do I measure that? What are the bases that we can use to assess how trustworthy someone is and how comfortable can I be when I don't know everything? Because transparency is not trust. Transparency is the opposite of trust. When I need to take my clothes off and show everything to you is because you don't trust me. If you do, I don't need to show anything, right? So that study from the Northwestern University says that it basically breaks down in 3 parts. Competence, I have what it takes to get the job done. 100%. That's the person I always wanted to work with. Care. I care about things that are beyond the execution of the project, the things that are beyond where my competence lives. And the last point is integrity, commitment. I keep my promises, no surprises. What I say is what I do is what I said. When those 3 things work in tandem, you have trust.
And why is trust such a critical ingredient in commercial growth, people growth, capability growth?
Because when you don't have it, it costs a lot of money to do business.
Why?
Because we need to prove things. We need to have meetings that are unnecessary. We need to be explaining ourselves. We need to be justifying. We need to bring proof for things that don't require proof. They only require trust.
Would you add anything to that?
I mean, I think, look, no one wants to mention the P word anymore, but, across the pandemic, we saw very clearly which brands were doing well and which weren't. And the brands that did well were the brands that customers trusted. I'm stuck at home. I still need to buy things. I need to know that they're going to arrive. I need to know they're going to work. Those brands did really well. I was at Maya then, and, we saw our trust scores rocketing from, I think when I started, we were like number 28. By the time I left, we were number 6. And it had a direct impact on commercials. So it's vital.
And how do you go about building trust off a base that, might not be at a point of brand contagion, but for those that are tuning in going, God, these guys are right. Like, how do we build an ecology that is, founded on trust? What would your advice be?
Yeah, I think, look, there are 2 ways. I think those 3 principles that I broke down to you is one thing. You can always pull those levers in any situation.
Care
and competence. I can do the job, no surprises, and, I'll care about the people and things around me, right? I'm not a reckless train wreck. The other thing is that trust can also be built really quick. And trust is an output of a chemical reaction that happens inside our bloodstream. And that happens when oxytocin is released in our blood. Oxytocin is known as the mutual hormone. It creates that feeling of mutuality. I feel for you as you feel for me. We have some connection. And oxytocin is often released when 2 people overcome a stressful situation together. So let's say after this interview, you and I will go to a pub, we have a chat, we have a few beers. Suddenly someone starts to push you. A fight breaks in. I intervene to help you, to protect you. We get out of the pub. We're fine. You will trust me for the rest of your life because I just helped you overcome a very stressful situation and we came out fine. Trust will be held, pretty much for the rest of our lives in that sense.
Is that why these big cultural moments, like these shared experiences, be it the Matildas or, be it the Super Bowl or be it, these cultural moments that galvanize us as a populace, because they're becoming so few and far with sort of the atomization of culture, that's why they sort of garner so much organic trust?
100%, and not just, those big global events, but you look at, so many corporations sending their top executives to those wilderness training. Spend a weekend in the bush with a knife, a bottle of water, and off you go. These people, they have to survive. They have to learn and collaborate and cooperate with one another. They have to trust one another to be able to survive. And they do. And when they come out of that, and I think the Marketing Academy, the boot camp was a little bit of that, right?
It seems very, very analogous.
Not on the physical sense of it, but, mentally and emotionally, extremely. So this is something that happens a lot, in the corporate world as well.
Gemma, from a creative perspective, right? I come to you with a brief. We need to build trust in our brand. What's going through your mind?
Lots of questions. Why?
Yep.
Trust in what? Your products, your services, your team. What is it that's missing currently for your brand that's led you to the place where you think trust is the thing you want to build upon? It always starts with questions for me. I mean, probably with every creative under the sun, which is why writing great briefs is so important. Get us thinking, get us curious. The more curious you can make a creative, the better work you're going to get out. So, yeah.
Ooh. And how do I make a creative curious?
Don't give me all the answers. So I think a very prescriptive brief is going to send you directly down that path. You're going to buy a car and you say, I'm looking for a car. I really want it to have a roof rack. It needs to be red and I want it to be small so I can park it easily. I'm only going to show you cars that fit that. But if you go, I'm looking for a car and I want to go on adventures, what I'm going to show you is going to be materially different. So within a brief, giving those prompts to this is where I want to end up, but not telling me exactly how you want me to get there is probably going to give you the best outcome. I mean, you mentioned GT Academy, right? So that literally started from PlayStation had a delay in Gran Turismo coming to market. So they had already announced that it was going to be released, and then there was a technical delay for 6 months, and they were worried about losing trust with their customers. And Nissan had said to us, we want to make the car cool again. It's seen as Nissan's seen as a bit of a hairdresser's car, and we want to be selling to 18 to 24-year-old guys. And that's all they said. And we then went back to the office and started playing Gran Turismo. I think I did the slowest lap time known to womankind on PlayStation. And I'm like, is that a Nissan there? Oh, that's a Nissan inside the PlayStation game. I wonder if making... if you're really good at this game, can you drive on a racetrack as well? And that's literally where we started. But if they had come to me and said, we need to do a pan-European promotion to achieve X, Y, Z, I don't think we would have got there. So keep it a little loose would be my advice.
The art of the possible.
Yeah.
And I think building on that, and since we're talking about cars, and you also mentioned the OSGP, one of the reasons where that made us pivot a little bit the direction and made them so successful was to make families trust that this is an event for them as well, not just for fans who want to see the rubber burning on the asphalt, right? Yeah. That was not the point. They wanted to shift and have more like the glamour, the activities that happen in the event, not just the race itself. The first thing that we recommended, and I remember as if it was yesterday, I was presenting to the board of the OSGP and Andrew Westacott was the CEO. And I said, we need to remove the grid girls. If you want families to come or groups of women to come, we need to stop objectifying women. This is what they represent. And that was the first step, to modernizing the Australian circuit. Right then and there, they said, done. And then, there were many other things that were part of the strategy, the recommendation that completely changed the way that the OSGP is delivered to its audiences, to its public. And the year after, that Melbourne became the most successful Grand Prix of the entire circuit.
Yeah, I mean, this year it's absolutely crushed it as well. I want to tackle growth from two sides. Given, I mean, the back book of brands that the two of you have provided steroid injections into, I mean, cannot be understated. And we'll link all sorts of brands in the bio to give people an understanding of the pedigree behind this. What, from your experience, what are the things that are really holding brands back from growth right now? If not trust, what?
Bravery.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, what do you mean by that?
I think that one of the outcomes of the last few years and all of the sort of unrest and uncertainty is brands have got less and less brave because they're chasing commercial growth, which, we all need to make sales, right? Yeah. We all need to hit the bottom line. Because that's getting harder. People are being more guarded with their money, making difficult choices about what they need to spend on in their household. Certainly in Australia, you've seen a bit of a renaissance of we're on sale and the focus to we have to discount to drive growth. But actually, you have to be brave to drive growth. You have to get people to see you in a new way or think of you in a way that they hadn't before. Surprise them.
Why is surprise so important? Because that does consistently come up in the marketers and the creatives that we speak to.
Yeah. Look, it's really hard to be original in creativity, in any form, you know, whether you're making an ad campaign, a movie, a TV series, whatever, there's a formula. There's a formula that creatives follow, and original ideas are really, really rare.
Simpsons did it.
Yeah. So if you can find that element of surprise, you've got something that either is totally original or is an original take on something you're used to.
Through a different prism.
But actually, the original take on something you're used to is often more effective. Netflix is a great example, right? Netflix has changed the way we consume documentaries. They've got a documentary formula, but it's shifted that dynamic to something that now is, you know, probably the strongest form of entertainment out there. You know, documentaries, everybody's watching documentaries, right? They just tweaked it a bit and it became brand new.
And what did they tweak? For those that are going, hold on, I didn't notice a tweak.
So I think one of the key things that I love breaking down TV series. So if anyone wants a workshop on, you know, how do you make a drama show, how do you make a documentary, that's literally my favorite, decoding that. But one of the things that they have done is more focus on character. So if you think about sort of documentaries in the past, you would have characters in the show. You would know who you were talking to. You know, I'm seeing the same firefighter on a regular basis. But you wouldn't really get to know them. They would just be doing their job. Now, you watch a Netflix documentary, the first third is introducing you in depth to character. So you form a connection with one of those 6 to 8 people. I can relate to you. I feel for you.
Yeah, you build this affinity.
I want to know where your story's going. Are you going to overcome that? You know, are you going to grow? What's going to happen? So you've got to know the characters before you get into the story. The tiger guy is a really good example, right? It's not actually that exciting a story. I mean, this is a guy who keeps some tigers and fights with his neighbor. That's pretty much what's going on there.
Yeah.
But he, as a character, is so interesting that we all got addicted to it.
It's such a profoundly simple but brilliant insight. You know, I'm even going like Wild Wild Country, another one where, or Drive to Survive. I mean, a meteoric success. You're right. It's sort of, you draw people in, you build this magnetism for the person. And then it became, to your point, it used to be the chronology of the events and these characters happen to be in that chronology. Now it's, let's introduce you to this person and guess what happens to them.
It was what's happened. Now it's who's it happened to.
Yeah, look what's happened to this person. Sergio, beyond bravery?
Look, I'm not going to go beyond bravery. I'm going to go below bravery.
All right. What's below bravery?
Below bravery is the source of it, right? Because we talk about bravery, but we need to reassure the client that it's worth pursuing it, right? And what we see today is that advertising is very boring. Many brands are so boring, and there's been a really massive study from Work that they Work published about boring brands in the UK, and I believe that advertising for them is 220% more costly. You know, if they were not so boring, and I think it tells a lot, right? You're being very conservative. You're being like everyone else. You're not really driving any attention, any cultural conversation, any cultural moment, and you're not going to sell. So the source of that, what's below that, is how we think, how we capture those messages, and how we remember them as well. In the end of the day, when you're promoting a brand, when you're running a campaign or designing a brand, you want 2 things. You want people to pay attention to you, and you want them to remember you. Attention is not a matter of, just being the louder, because when everyone is loud and you're just louder, you just add to the noise. Our brains are not processing machines. The computer is. ChatGPT is. Our brains are predictive machines. we are always 2-3 seconds ahead. And this is something that was developed in a way to protect our own existence. Back in the day, in the caves, caveman comes out of the cave for a hunt, looks at the bush, there is some orange-yellow patch moving. Oh, it's a lion. I'm predicting. But maybe it's, that girl from the other tribe that is wearing a yellow dress. The prediction could be wrong, right? So when you break someone's prediction, if I say something that you are not expecting me to say, that is not matching what, where your mind is already at 2-3 seconds ahead, that's when I get your attention. When you look at Games of Thrones, right? I think 8,000 hours of content. And for the past 10 years, everyone has been saying human mind, attention has decreased to a goldfish, 6 seconds. So how can people stick around for so long in a TV show? Or, Joe Rogan, we're in a podcast. Joe Rogan has 3-hour conversations and people stay there. Why? Because it's breaking their predictions. You're being different. You're surprising. So there's a good thing about surprise. Yeah. It captures people's attention. When I hit the table, you're not expecting for that to happen. I have your attention. But then it's memory. How are you going to remember, this weird thing, this different thing that you're not expecting me to do? It's not about repeating that message, right? And in advertising, there is, a lot of, reach and frequency. How many people should I reach and how frequently should I be reaching them? And back in the day, I think there is a book from 1890 something saying that you need to hit someone 20 times, and after the 20th time, they're going to buy from you. And every single time you reach, you have the exposure, it means something different. That was back then. What neuroscience tells us today is that memory is not a matter of how many times I'll tell you something. For example, the periodic table of the chemical elements, right? I hated that at school. I have, a very intense emotional relationship with that. But do you ask me if I remember any of the elements? No, I don't. Even though I had an emotional connection to that.
Exposures to it.
And I had, more than 20 exposures to that, but I don't remember. We remember we remember the things we talk about. So information comes in, information is processed, and then eventually, if it's interesting or valuable enough, the information will come out. So it's when Gemma tells, a couple of friends about that tiger show that she will never forget, not from Netflix advertising that 50 times, that she's going to remember that. That memorability.
Because if your customers are selling your products for you, you don't need to.
Exactly, and that increases your efficiencies as well as your effectiveness.
So what isn't bravery? How are people going to mishear this?
From my perspective, it's basically rinse and repeat. And there is a lot of that happening as well. There is a good argument to that. And we know that the highest performing campaigns, the best brands are the most consistent ones. So when you have consistency, it's really good, right? It's very easy to recognize you. You become very identifiable. But sometimes you just become, a piece of furniture and no one will pay attention to you. So this is something that is potentially on the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a bunch of research on this specifically around the benefit of fluidity in tone. Don't throw the brand canvas out, but we don't speak in monotone to our kids or to our partners.
Yeah.
And as a brand, why all of a sudden are we speaking in monotone?
Look, I don't know if you like jazz, but jazz is a type of music that you have a melodic bass. It doesn't change. And then you have like this improvisation on top.
I love,
right?
So just forensic interpretation of things. It's brilliant.
But it's beautiful because a strong brand is exactly that. I will always recognize the melody, but here and there, you'll spark some surprise and will make me think about you in a different way.
What a great analogy. Gemma, what would you not want people... So staying on bravery, what isn't bravery? What's what don't you want people to go, all right, I'm going to go and be brave and do this. And you're like, that's not bravery.
I think probably jumping on the bandwagon of culture isn't brave. So, brands going, okay, we're seeing this trend and we're going to jump onto that trend, but you have never talked about that before. That's not brave, that's stupid.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah. It's, the debate we had about that Yves Saint Laurent film was the sort of, I guess probably where I won the argument in the end is I pointed out to Sergio that film's not a one-off piece, that there's an entire foundation. They are actively working hard in this space. They have every right to put this film out because they do stuff, they take action. They're not just telling you to change your mind, they're working hard to help you get there. So authenticity, Sergio mentioned earlier, you've got to be authentic as well as surprising, which can sound counterintuitive, right? But I have to be surprised, but not so surprised that I'm like, this makes no sense to me.
Surprised, not alienated.
Yeah.
I love that. I think the jazz reference is absolutely brilliant. One of my favorite examples of this, because, as I said, I look at brand tone a lot, is what Apple did with their ESG ad when they brought Octavia Spencer in, right? Really out of lockstep with the posture that a brand that, has been consistent and I think, is, one of the best marketing companies in the, in the world. Then when they're talking about their most serious, right? What is really important, what we do in terms of minimizing our impact, what we do for sustainability and for the good of the world, we bring in humor and we bring in banter and we as you said, we surprise you with, oh, hold on, this isn't what I thought. Doesn't detract from the message, right? You still remember, and in fact, what it's done is it's implanted in me. Hold on a second. No, they really do a lot because it was delivered in this really different, out of kilter. And I think that is a good example, I think, of the point that I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has to be true to the brand, but a step up or forward or side. It's I'm still the same person, but I've just got your attention in a what?
Yeah. You mentioned culture. Both of you mentioned culture independently earlier. If I'm trying to foster a culture of bravery, right, within a business that might not have taken quite a forward centre of mass in terms of its posture on bravery, what would be your guidance to them? What would be the practical things that I could start to do now that builds bravery, to your point, within the building as well as outside the building, because they are so codependent?
Yeah. So I'd say there are three things.
Okay.
The first one, and a conversation I have with teams throughout my career, is understand who you're talking to. That is absolutely fundamental, because if you're going in and presenting a big, brave idea, you've got 10 people in the room, one of those people is the CFO. The CFO's mind works really differently from the CMO. So you've got to present the idea in a way that both of those people are going to get excited and feel comfortable. In my experience, CFOs tend to like data. So, if I've mentioned diversity, equality, and inclusion is really important to me. And when I'm trying to sell ideas in where we've embraced that, I will often use ABS data, which at first surprised quite a lot of people, and you're a creative. Why are you hanging on to the ABS data? Because it proves what we're doing. It proves that the collection of people that we're representing in this piece of content are directly relevant to the collection of Australians in this market. So we are talking to the whole market by doing this, and here's the data to prove it. And that makes it easier for someone who's more analytically minded to go, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. Whereas someone maybe that's sort of more lateral thinking, creative, whatever, they might be hooking onto that idea is really surprising, and that's what I love about it. But you've got to make sure you understand how everybody thinks before you present. So that's number one. Number two is bravery for the sake of bravery is bullshit. So is there a really good reason why you're suggesting doing something that is going to break what I think you are currently? And then I think number three is absolutely fundamental. You have to have somebody that knows how to sell bravery. So if you're...
I think we've got one.
Yeah. if you're going in a new direction, ensure that you're putting someone in the room that understands the formula to get it across the line and can make everyone feel safe and secure that it is a brave idea, but you know how to do it. So I'm okay with that.
There was a great ism from one of the very, I think it might have been the first episode we ever had on the vodcast with James Leggett, who was former CEO of M&C Saatchi. And he said, bravery is not bravado.
Yeah.
there's a big difference.
Yeah.
And that was sort of how he had articulated that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very, simple articulation of what
Absolutely.
you're saying. We're not signaling for bravery's sake.
No.
There's got to be something, real meaning behind it, purpose.
Totally.
Yeah, and from experience, I've suffered a lot from that too. I once tried to be very brave with a client, and it backlashed in massive ways. And you learn from that too, which is great. So I think what Gemma said about know who you're talking to and deliver it in the way that they understand, and it's aligned, with their strategies or values or principles, is extremely important. That client was, homeware type of client. We're dealing with bedding. That was the category that was going to be advertised and promoted. And I said, look, 9 in 10 Australians, they have sleep issues. So everything of that is going to be informing your campaign should be about that. And I gave so much proof, and I say, and how to be brave in a way, that you can reframe sleep by creating a sanctuary of your bedroom, and blah 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 blah. And I could sense how the client, the CMO of that pretty large company, was, getting quite infuriated, because there was a strategy behind that. That they wanted the brand to promote the bedroom, as not only a place where you do 2 fundamental things, but a lot more than that, right? In my mind, the bedroom is a place where you do 2 things. And the rest, you can live for outside of that. But for them, the bedroom is becoming this more dynamic space, and they wanted more activity. It's a workplace, it's a play space, it's a sleeping space, and many other things. And that was went completely down the drain. It was like a massive mistake that I made, because I didn't know that was, what was driving their business strategy.
And how do you come back from that? I mean, as practitioners that pitch for big business, right, and pitch and really, I can tell, throw blood, sweat and tears and joy into these things, when it falls like a lead balloon, beyond, and a point taken on, all feedback is good feedback and you learn from it, how do you turn the radio off in the back of your head, right? Because that's the thing I think a lot of people struggle with, myself included. You get feedback thirsty, but when you get it, there's that radio that turns on.
Yeah.
What's the strategy there?
Fresh thinking.
What do you mean by that?
Put someone else in the room. That would be the first thing that I would do. So, look, as a creative, I have pitched millions of times, millions of ideas, had millions of yeses and millions of nos. And the pattern that I've noticed is quite often you're working on a client and you might go 3 rounds on ideas and you still haven't quite got there. The creative team are going to be attached to some of those ideas. That's just human nature, right? We're passionate about, we've just given birth to this idea. It's our baby. We're invested in it. We believe it's brilliant. Even if you hate it, you're wrong and it's brilliant. And we're attached to it. And we can't get out of our own way sometimes. So you've got to bring someone else in who's going to either question that idea and, massage it and add to it and change it so that it is workable, or they're going to come with another idea that's better. But you're not going to change anything fundamentally with the same people working the same way.
And is that because no matter how divergent I try to be, there's going to be a little bit of me that's still anchoring to that was the best idea?
Yeah. If I just tweak it a bit like this,
They'll love
maybe
it.
they'll buy
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. With that client, I removed myself from the account. I had a conversation with the account director saying why that information wasn't on the brief. Back again to the brief, the value of good briefs. But then I said, look, put someone else. I need to remove myself from this because, it will be too much baggage from that previous experience.
Wow. Again,
I
guess the self-awareness and the humility to go, for the betterment of this brand, I'm not the right person right now. And I think right now is the important bit. I think is profoundly wise. We could talk for hours. I mean, we've only scratched the surface of the areas I'd love to chat with the both of you on. But I want to be respectful of your time and our audience's time. So we're going to change gear for the very last little bit. We've got this tradition as part of Unfiltered this time round where we've got 3 big questions plus 1. Gemma, I'm going to start with you on this.
Okay.
What is the single most important question we should be asking ourselves?
As human beings, am I living true to my values?
Okay. Sergio, what's the single most important question we should be asking ourselves?
What matters most? I think at any given time, you will always be conflicted by choices, options, opportunities, reactions. What matters most? And how do I go about it?
And do you have any guiding principles on how do you navigate that if you've got this tension and you can't? What is it? Gut? Is there a rubric? I feel as though you've got some physics behind this that you can impart on for those that are staring down the barrel of a fork in the woods.
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit of everything. Going back to that story with that client, I knew that what mattered most wasn't my ego, was the success of that campaign, the success of the agency, and my own career with them when I was working there. So removing myself from that scenario was the best decision, and that was what mattered most.
I'll stay with you on this one. What's the most important thing to let go of?
Ooh, your ego. But it's hard. And sometimes you get back, but you still need to let go.
And with ego, is it 1 step forward, 3 steps back, 3 steps forward again?
It's a dance. It's a dance because if you completely drop it, then you drop your balls. And because, if you have an ego, you can be brave, you can be courageous, you can be outrageous. If you don't have that, if you don't have confidence in yourself, and I'm not talking about arrogance, just being confident, being assertive, believing in the work that you've done and all the preparation that you took to deliver that, recommendation, that is ego. And that's important and that matters. But if something else matters more than your ego at that point, drop it.
Gemma, what is the most important thing to let go of?
I would say the trauma that you've experienced in your life. So, if you have been through difficult things, they've had an impact on you. Even if you're the most resilient person in the world and you've just powered through, they've had an impact on you. Unless you understand and work through that impact, at some point it's going to come up again. So face your fears and face what's happened to you and learn from it.
Spoken from someone with more experience than any of us should have to have.
Yeah.
Gemma, what is a life well lived?
I mean, fundamentally one where you are surrounded by people you love, friends, family, people that lift you up, that stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and you're a better person because of their presence. I think that's really important. I think adventure for me, not standing still, having experiences and constantly trying new things and pushing yourself.
I'm going to give you a break on this one. I'm going to ask one question, even though I shouldn't. Has that changed post your experience with cancer? If I were to ask you that question beforehand?
Yeah.
Is there a delta there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think pre-cancer, life was, easy, fun, and not massively challenging. And it made me look myself in the eye and really think about what matters to me. I remember having a conversation with the doctor after they diagnosed me, and we were sort of talking about the pretty brutal treatment plan ahead. And I said, do I have to stop working? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, cancer's not going to kill me, but if you make me stop working, that will. I need to be creative. I need to be with the team. I need an energetic environment. That's what I need. And all of that was true, but I didn't really look after myself. So I was pretty exhausted at the end. So I think what's changed for me is self-care as well as adventure.
Sergio, what is a life well lived?
Everything that you said, and a life where you can tell many stories about it. Because if you don't have much to say, you haven't really lived. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And all of that, makes who you are. I have so many stories. I mean, we have so many stories that sometimes, you need to calm down and stop from that. But not all those stories are happy ones, or with happy endings. And but they are important. They are very important.
And we don't see the light without the shade.
We don't see the light without the shade. And that's actually how I named my daughter. I have 3 kids, 16, 12, and 2. Same wife. The baby, Chiara. Chiara in Italian means light. And it also comes from Leonardo da Vinci. He invented a technique called chiaroscuro. And chiaroscuro is, he doesn't use lines when he draws. He just use shades and light. And that creates shapes. The truth, the beauty is revealed through the contrast of the dark and the light.
Yep.
The physics
See what
behind
I mean?
everything. Gemma, Sergio, it has been an absolute pleasure. I think my head's still spinning, but what I have taken from this is you're one of the most incredible examples of where 1 + 1 can clearly equal 3. And even in the very short time that I've spent with the two of you, I can see how logic and emotion collide in this beautiful sort of spectrum of thinking. But thank you both for your generosity of insight, for your wisdom, and for bringing yourselves today. So I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.